Hey friends, this is part 2 of my interview with Brett Bishop. So heads up, if you haven't already, go back and watch the first part of this episode because this picks up right where we left off. All right, let's get into it. So let's get into a little bit of the Market Center of the future, right? So let's start with, when building the Market Center of the future, is there something that we can do to anticipate like ease of protecting the equipment that or protecting the environment that we're creating?
So one of the things for me, and I'll just touch on the history of where it came from just briefly, and the fact that you and I are both tech trainers.
Yeah.
Right? And we got forced into this hybrid world
Yeah.
of training, right? Because before a natural disaster, we had an epidemic, a pandemic that turned into an epidemic. So with COVID and everything, we were forced into market centers are closed. We still have to train and love on our people and make sure they're getting the education that they need. So we got thrust into this hybrid world of training. I mean, do you wish you'd have bought stock in Zoom?
Oh yeah, dude. But so it's not even at that point. It wasn't even hybrid though. It was
strictly Zoom.
strictly virtual.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Strictly virtual. But then as we started to come out of that, we were all forced into this uncomfortable because as we started to open up, and we were fortunate that we were in a state that allowed us to continue to work. Like we, in our profession as real estate agents, we were considered in the state of Florida to be an essential business.
Yeah.
There's a lot of states that weren't, and those, we have KW family and just real estate family in general. In like, I think of Michigan. Michigan was shut down for 3 months.
Yeah.
If not longer. But
I just want to make a little side point on this though. Something I noticed is we were able, because of the pandemic, to get a lot more visibility on what we do as tech trainers, as technologists in the real estate sphere. And I think that's part of the Keller Williams mindset that's been ingrained in us, that it was an opportunity, right? And every challenge, and we can apply this to any situation, whether it's a pandemic or a hurricane or whatever, every challenge presents a new opportunity.
Right.
And what was really like, my career blew up because of the pandemic, because originally I'm confined to the walls of the market center and what I'm doing. And now all of a sudden I can do what I was doing inside the market center for anyone in the world.
Right. Well, you did a lot of virtual training, right?
And so, and I was blessed to have an awesome OP who is very forward thinking, Andrew Barber. Love him to death, and a great leadership team with John Barber and Naomi, and they were very supportive. And Andrew was like, "Hey, I want training every day," and so I was on Zoom every single day. And it wasn't just this link goes out to the agents. I put it on my Facebook page. I live streamed every training on Facebook. I blasted it out on the groups. Hey, if you need any training, join this. And it was great because we got a great level of exposure.
Right.
And it led to some really big advances in my career. And that was within, I joined KW January of 2019. So it was barely a year in.
Yeah.
This happens. And just within this 1 year of learning how to be opportunistic, I was able to pivot on a dime and take full advantage of the opportunity that was presented in the challenge. And I think it's so easy, and I see this a lot, where like, again, the hurricane hits or pandemic hits or whatever challenge, we have all these unique challenges throughout the country. It's easy to be victim mindset and think, I'm just going to throw my hands up in the air, forget real estate, forget my business. I'm just going to go get a 9-to-5, or I'm going to whatever, or it's the end of the world. When in all reality, there's other people that are seeing the opportunity or looking for the opportunity. Because I mean, really, you just have to be that kind of person. The opportunity, like it's not that hard to find it if you have the mindset.
Yeah, well,
Right.
absolutely, right? I mean, one of the things we talk about in Keller Williams all the time is limiting beliefs, and that's what shuts most agents, tech people, whatever. I mean, that's what shuts them down.
Yeah.
Is their own limiting beliefs. You can excel if you get in the right mindset.
Yep.
I think one of the interesting things as you were talking about that I thought about was, I especially like new people coming into the tech community, because we have a fantastic tech community, do we not?
Oh yeah,
like the tech community,
especially
in Keller
here in
Williams.
South Florida, dude.
Yeah.
We've got a really cool community
Yeah,
here. Yeah,
and South Florida has a close connection to, I believe it's South Texas region, right? With Marty and Janelle, isn't that
I
South Texas?
believe
I think that's what they
there's a
call it.
lot of Texas,
Right.
so I'd like,
Yeah, I know.
I just
The
I
big state too.
Texas, right?
Right.
And I barely passed geography, so don't like. I'm definitely in the right,
right.
right industry.
But I, if it wasn't for COVID, that tech community is not as tight.
You're right.
Because we got on national Zooms together. Otherwise, we'd be meeting each other at family reunion, mega camp, if we were able to go.
Yeah.
And it was because of COVID. So you look at the silver lining of everything and the blessing in catastrophe.
Yeah.
And the tech community is as tight as it is because of going through that and having to go virtual.
Yeah. The world got a lot smaller.
Yeah.
Oddly enough.
Yeah.
And I have some people that I consider some of my closest friends that I can count on one hand the times we've seen each other in person.
Well, think back to the first time that you and I met in person.
Yeah.
Like, it was surreal.
It was.
Because we felt like we've known each other all of our lives. And this
Yeah.
is true of all the MCTTs in our South Florida region. Our regional tech trainer, Ryan Yarbrough, was instrumental in bringing us together and creating this community.
Yeah. He did a great job.
Absolutely. To the point that when we actually met in person for the first time, which I believe was the first MCTT summit in Wellington.
Yeah.
At Dora's Market Center.
Yep.
That was the first time most of us really met in person. And it was surreal because, and even going to, I think I was with you the first time that you met Zach in person. And I was floored.
Yes, it was.
I was floored. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, I thought you were bros. You hung all the time, man.
So it was he taught
was
train
it for
the presenter here. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that was the first time I hung out with him in person.
Yeah. And I didn't I thought you guys were boys. You know what I mean?
And he is a
And
close
you are.
friend. Yeah,
You are. But it was virtual
and he's
boys
my business
until that
partner
time.
now. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so funny. Yeah.
It's so surreal the way all that stuff came to me.
So, man, rabbit trail. So what is the market center of the future? I know we're dropping terminology, and I'm assuming people understand, but let's not assume. So what is the market center of the future?
So market center of the future came out of this this need of a hybrid environment because I don't think
define hybrid.
Yeah, so hybrid means that you have a live audience and you also have a Zoom audience or a video conferenced audience.
Virtual audience.
Some people don't necessarily use Zoom, right?
Yeah. And so that was the history lesson we were going through.
Right.
We were only live. And then forced into only virtual.
Yep. And now we got to bring it back together.
And now we got to bring it back together. And we're in this weird world where some people really enjoy the convenience of virtual. And there's still some people that are concerned with COVID and have their own personal health concerns. And it's I understand that. And so they want to avoid large groups and being in confined spaces, and totally understand that. And so how do we integrate both? And I know I asked you the question and now I'm answering it, but
that's all right.
How do we serve all people?
So it's by having the right technology that facilitates that, right?
Yeah.
So our good friend Janelle Gonzalez is an amazing software person and apps, and I'm the hardware side of that thing, right? So And she and I have awesome conversations where we talk about that because I understand the hardware and I'm always seeking that out for Market Center of the Future. She's actually we were two separate entities that came through this tech community like we're talking about, but we've had conversations about how do we bring this all together to make that. But basically, with the Market Center of the Future, my own Market Center included. My Market Center was actually one of the last ones to get an upgrade. But we looked at it through the eyes of Keller Williams Systems and Models. So Train the Presenter was an eye opener for that. I had already started at the time, but based on those principles. And it was looking at what do the market centers have in place, and is it conducive to a hybrid environment? Yeah. And it really wasn't. I mean, we're a technology company, and at that time, you know, Gary had already been calling us a technology company for well over a year.
Oh yeah,
and we've got projectors and pull down screens, right? Where you're training and you've got, you know, words across your eyeballs.
Yeah.
Because you're standing, right? You're standing in front of the projector and you can't get away from that. So we started looking at all that. And so the easy solution there was, okay, let's pull down the projector. And the way that I look at it, I always have everybody that and like you were talking about before, like so much of this company has just become relationship and word of mouth and things like that. And I've had people reach out to me from all over the country that I've never met before, just because the community has, you know, spread the word.
Yeah.
And so we take that projection screen away, that projector away, because the other thing about a projector that's a problem that I had in my own market center is, let's turn the lights off because we can't see anything. Yeah. Yeah, well, our lights were wired to where you couldn't turn off a row of lights. The whole room goes dark. Yeah. Right? And so that was problematic.
Well, and then I noticed this too. Today we were at your team meeting, and it was at the Board of Realtors, and they had a big old projection screen, right? Yep. And you had Zoom going, 2 cameras. It was an awesome setup, just a quick, you know, pop-up setup. But I noticed you couldn't read anything on the projector because it was blown out.
Right.
So even despite the lights, you're now excluding everyone
that's
on
in that
Zoom,
virtual audience.
In the virtual audience, because now they can't read the content that you're sharing with everyone else.
Yeah. Exactly. So we at the bare minimum, we looked at that first and we said, okay, we need to get rid of the projection screen. So typically you're going to have 2 or 3 large LED TVs, right? And in a lot of the situations, we've actually only been doing 2. So we got 1 on each side, because then that leaves room in the middle for either a smart board, or some market centers still love that dry erase board, right?
It's or the flip chart.
Yeah.
I personally, I really like the flip chart. There's something about the experience.
Yeah. Well, I know Zach does too. That's one of the things that he teaches us in Train the Presenter, proper technique. I'm a lefty though, so I have no technique with whiteboards. Are you a lefty? I am a lefty. And lefties are not. What is that supposed to mean?
I don't know.
Dude, that means I'm a creative. What are you talking about? But anyway, lefties were not meant to write on dry erase boards.
Oh yeah, because you just smear as you go along.
I look like I was in a graffiti fight when I'm done after a couple lines. But so you've got your screens. Typically, we've got 1 over each row, and then you've got the central. Team leaders are hard to break habits, right? And they love that dry erase board. But you can have either 2 or 3 TVs there. And then one of the things that we really got into in this virtual environment was the presentation monitor, or the confidence monitor. And that is a ceiling mounted LED screen that only the presenter sees, so that they can see their notes in a slideshow or whatever it is that they, you know, what they're looking at. And sometimes it's just exactly what's on the monitors, but they don't have to turn around and look back.
Yeah, they're not giving
because
their back
one
to
of the
the
biggest
audience.
Absolutely. You disconnect from your audience the minute you turn your back.
Yep.
Right? And that's something that we learn in Train the Presenter and Train the Trainer Advanced Workshop, and just all these. And that's really what it was at the time I had only had Train the Presenter. And so taking those techniques and what you learn there, and the first time I had it, actually when I took it with Zach, it was after I had already started implementing Market Center in the Future.
Yeah.
But I had taken it with Holly Prescott the first time and just, kind of took some of that in to realize what needed to happen. But then in that virtual environment now, how do we get the Zoom audience to hear everything that's going on in that classroom? Because guess what? We're not using a webcam mic or the horrible mic built into even a nice Sony camera, right? You got to use quality audio, right?
Yeah.
Because
so real quick,
you give me props for this all the time. What do we say about that, right?
Yeah.
At least half of video is audio.
Yeah. 75% of video is audio. And to prove that, I'm going to take a second, and we've got audio coming from the camera. Right now, you're listening to the camera audio and hearing how you're hearing the whole room, you're hearing the reflections of the audio, and now switching back to our mics, you hear it cut out. Like, you hear the isolation. And here's how I explain it to people. Have you ever taken a photo and then taking another photo, the same photo, but in portrait mode on your phone?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what you're doing is you're isolating your subject from the background, and that photo looks more clear. It looks more, it's more aesthetically pleasing.
Right.
It's the same thing with audio. If you're hearing the whole room, then you're just seeing the mess of everything. You're experiencing the mess of everything. But if you can get the audio isolated to what you actually want to hear, then it's much more pleasing to the ear, much more listenable, especially because, I mean, with audio, there's this sense of control that we have in visual that we can get away with, right? As the viewer, I can choose what I am focusing on, right? Like I have peripheral vision. I can look directly at you and ignore this stuff.
Right.
With audio, we don't have that same control.
Exactly.
Right? It's there. It's in our ears no matter what. And so that's why it needs a lot more attention.
Yeah. So when you are hearing the audio through a mic like this, right? And I know the SM7B, this is the other one. What is it? MV7, right? One of the things that I put emphasis on in my Market Center of the Future upgrades, and it came out of necessity. And honestly, my eyes were opened when I went down to South Florida. I thought everybody had humongous purse strings. It's Miami, man, everywhere, right? And when I got down there and I realized that, hey, they're operating on just as tight a budget as my little podunk, community market center, it was an eye opener for me. Fortunately, I've always kind of had to do for myself, and I came into technology through value technology. Yeah. Right. So, and then honestly, when you and I first met, you told me about the Samsung Q2U, right? Isn't that what it is, the Q2U?
Samsung Q2U or the ATR 2100. They're pretty much clones.
Right. But the cool thing about the Q2U is you could use it as a handheld mic for team meetings, not just in a podcast situation like this. Whereas the what's the other one?
They're both exactly the same. They both have XLR and USB. Right, and that's why I recommend both of them.
Yeah.
So it's same with these mics, these MV7s. It's I love that because you have that flexibility to say I can, and you can do it. You can do both at the same time with all of these. So I could say, hey, I want to run this XLR into my mixer so that I can have house sound.
Yeah.
But if I just use the webcam mic, I'm just going to it's going to be noisy and reverb. It's garbage. So then I can also run this USB into the computer for the Zoom audio. You'd probably just run out of the mixer into Zoom audio. But again, if you're running a podcast, that's another great example is I can, if I'm recording with someone on Zoom, I can have the USB, so I'm talking to them through my mic, and then have this XLR going on to an ancillary recorder, or whatever. So you have that flexibility to do whatever you want with it. Same thing with the ATR 2100 is Audio Technica or the Samson Q2U.
Oh, so that's what it is. So I was thinking of the other Samson that is built more like this as a studio mic, but you're talking about the Audio Technica version that is exactly the same as the Samson.
Yeah,
right. Okay, so I got you on that.
Yeah.
So what
it's it's Q4U, I think is what you're thinking of.
Okay.
Which is more of like a...
I'm thinking of the ATR 2020, I think, which is like more of a studio type microphone. It's not going to be a handheld.
Yeah,
right?
no, 2020, and that's a compressor or a condenser microphone.
Yep.
And that's another thing. The one thing I love about these mics, and we're getting into all kinds of crazy stuff. So whatever.
We probably just lost a bunch of people because we're geeking out on technology. But hey,
heads up, this is a longer episode, by the way. So there's condenser mics and dynamic mics.
Yep.
These are dynamic mics, and the things with dynamic mics is they pick up a smaller range of audio.
Yep.
So
they're more just
directional
in front.
Directional right in front of you. Even so, that's called cardioid. So they use like a butt shape to.
It is true,
and so it's like it's picking up this polar pattern, right?
Yeah.
Now imagine like if I'm here, you hear me a lot louder than if I'm back here,
right?
Whoops.
That's all right.
So with a condenser mic, it's this, they'll have the same cardioid pattern, but it's much larger. And the
Picks
problem
up
with
a
that,
lot more room on
that's the problem is like in here we have hardwood floors. There's not
much on the walls.
Yeah, nothing on the walls. Leather couches, not microfiber things that would pick up noise. And you're not hearing a ton of echo right now. But if I had say like a Blue Yeti, which is like my arch nemesis mic, like you'd be hearing everything. You'd be hearing the awkward sounds that like my mouth makes as I'm like drinking my beer or whatever. This cuts all that out.
Right.
And that's why I recommend MV7, which is it's a $250 microphone. I understand it's out of a lot of people's budgets. So next best thing, Samson Q2U or the ATR 2100.
Right.
And I think they've done some updated versions of those. So I'd have to look back because 8 years ago, I was using the ATR 2100 in my podcast. And I mean, they're still fantastic mics, and they're both less than $100.
But what I was getting at before you geeked out on
I'm sorry. You like triggered something and I freaking ran with it.
I wasn't getting it. I didn't mean to get into polar patterns and cardioids and all that stuff. What I was getting at, going back to Market Center of the Future,
there we go. Back to
was finding products that have multi-use value.
There you go.
So so the Q2U is awesome whether you're doing podcasting, whatever. You've got the XLR, the USB. Even if you're an independent agent, right, a solo agent, and you just want something better quality for a Zoom call. Yeah, that Q2U is perfect.
It is.
But guess what? It also doubles as a microphone for your team meetings.
Yeah.
Right?
And being that it's dynamic, it's less likely to feedback.
Right.
It's easier to control with the soundboard or the mixer or whatever. So
So when I look at the Market Center of the Future, that's what I'm looking at. Is I'm looking at products that are one, high value. So for me, the displays, hands down, Vizio. And the reason for it is because Vizio is a very high value display. 4K. The 4K displays have they're smart TVs. They have Apple AirPlay built in. They have Chromecast built in.
Yeah.
So you don't have to get any other devices, adapters, whatever. Buy a Vizio display, and it's got everything you need.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can screen share, or at least like Google Slide at the very, very, very minimum is. It's on a PC or a Mac, or a Chromebook.
Yeah, absolutely.
At that point, to any Vizio or to this Vizio, any device can share to this Vizio.
Yeah, and like if I have a training room that has 2 or 3 displays, I can actually only AirPlay or Chromecast to one of those.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't even think of that.
You can't do it multi unless you get into and now honestly the way that I set up the Market Centers of the Future, yes, I can, because I'm getting into HDMI duplicators and things like that. So it can be done. But I mean, one of the cool things is like in my Market Center, we ended up with 3 displays. We've got the one in the middle and then 2 on the outside. So if I am casting, I cast to the one in the middle because everybody can kind of see it.
Yeah.
You know. But before we got off on our nerd talk of microphones, what we started in that conversation was how do we pick up all of the sounds and the audience participation in the live audience so that the virtual audience can hear it.
Yeah.
And
that's the biggest struggle.
It is. But what I found, and it was crazy to me because I started Market Center of the Future in 21, right? About a year and a half ago. And the microphone that I came across has been... the technology hasn't changed at all, and it came out in 2001.
Yeah, that thing's old.
Right? It blew your mind when you found that out, right?
It did.
And it's a microphone array, and it's by Acoustic Magic, and it's called the Voice Tracker. And it basically has like 8 microphones in it, and it has an LED display. There's these LED lights on it that actually will go back and forth because where it hears the sound coming up, all 8 of those microphones will track over to that's where the voice tracker comes from. It'll track the attention over to there. And it's funny because we ceiling mount that typically.
Yeah.
And my training room is about 30 feet wide by 20 feet deep, and it picks up everything in that room. If you get bigger than that, the cool thing is that you can actually put 2 of them in a room like that. They are designed to have... I've never gotten into 3 or more than that, but Acoustic Magic will actually tell you that they're designed to have 2 in a room. It actually comes with a Y splitter.
Oh, and so they'll pair and...
Yeah. But the blessing and the curse is that it picks up every sound. So I've actually had trainings before where the people right under the mic were whispering. And the microphone picked up everything. And honestly, when I test those, I think you actually helped me test one once. But it's funny when I'm doing a Market Center of the Future and I need to test equipment because a lot of the times it's just me.
Yeah.
I'm one guy and I'm not nearly as young as I used to be, and I'm up and down a ladder all the time, and so an average conversion will take me 2 to 3 days as a one-man show. And so when I need to test this equipment, I don't have anybody to reach out to for a Zoom call, but I do because I have this awesome South Florida Market Center tech trainer community, right?
Drop it in our chat.
Yeah, I drop it in the chat, and next thing I know, Sebi, Ariel, Dora, Ryan, you, whatever, let's test it. And the crazy thing about that microphone is in a room that size, 30 by 20, that's a pretty decent sized room, right? I can whisper in the corner or talk in a voice like this in a corner, probably 15 feet away from that microphone, and they hear it plain as day.
Yeah.
So it's the discovery of hardware like that most people don't know where to begin.
Yeah.
And honestly, when you reach out to, say, an audiovisual company, even one that specializes in classrooms, they don't specialize in what we do, and they don't understand it.
Yeah, it's very unique. I know, like the Market Center I used to be at, they had a camera set up. Like he was future minded, was already thinking that way. But the camera, it was an SDI camera, right? So like you've already eliminated a huge demographic of people that can use this camera.
And you've also lost value because anything that's SDI is expensive.
Yeah. And so then like it was a camera, it was like Marshall, I forget, Marshall something. It was Marshall, not like the guitar amps, but Marshall. Right. And so I looked it up, as the camera that they stick in like the pylons in
the NFL or something.
In the NFL, sports ball.
In sports ball,
they put them in the pylons in sports ball. And it's like super wide angle. So I'm like, okay, so first off, it's a weird wide angle, right? Like you see, like I don't
almost a little fisheye.
It is. It's very fisheye, and so you get like the ceiling's like rounded and the corners and stuff. And I understand you want wider angle to see everything, but it's in the middle of the training room, so it's this big weird curve, and then like, okay, so now it's just raw video. Like it's now I have to put it into, to get it on Zoom, I have to put it into a converter, convert it from analog to digital. And then after the conversion, what do I have to run through OBS so I can put a LUT on it so it doesn't look like this pale raw, I forget what it's.
What, there's just the raw video?
The raw video. What do they call it?
There's no color grading.
Yeah, no color grading. But what do they call it when the
when the thing does the thing, and then the other thing?
So like with photography, they call it raw.
Right.
Right. In video, it's another term. What is it?
I thought it was raw video.
It's DJI calls it Cine something.
Oh, yeah, and Canon has a word for it too, and Sony, they all have their own version of it.
I feel like an idiot because I know.
Yeah. I don't know.
But you know what I'm talking about, right? It looks very desaturated.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of color because you're intended to go and color grade it.
Yes.
And make it how you want it to look. And so it's like this very stale, boring video. And now I've got to figure out a way to get audio, and that's a whole nother thing. And then again, it's like it's not flexible. You've lost value. Exactly what you're saying.
So one of the main things about the Market Center of the Future concept too is the ease of use, like you were talking
100%.
about, right?
Yeah.
So my first experience with one of those SDI cameras that you're talking about so PTZ Optics is actually a name brand that makes a lot of those cameras. Well, first of all, those cameras typically are $2,000 to $3,000, and you normally have to have some kind of highly technical person to be able to run that camera for you, right? So my first experience with one of those was when I did the Market Center of the Future upgrades for Boynton and Boca, Jackie Ellis's market centers.
Yeah.
And she had one of those in each of those market centers. And it had a separate like cloud-based software that controlled it. And then you had to integrate that into Zoom or whatever your video.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a pretty technical person. I was confused. Yeah. Right? And
jaded, right? Like, do I want to week after week after week?
Well, in $2,000 to $3,000.
Yeah.
Realistically, in my Market Center of the Future concept, for most average size training rooms, $3,000 is going to buy most of the hardware.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. I've seen the list of what you get. 100%.
Right? And so the other thing that we look at with the Market Center in the Future is the value to the Market Center. So as you know, our big things, and even with MCTT, so with an MCTT, our 4 pillars are support, training, education, and retention, right? Retention, Market Center of the Future is all about retention.
Support, training, recruiting, and retention. You said training and education, which are the same thing.
Yeah. Thank you. I was close. But when it comes to the retention piece of it, that's another value proposition to the Market Center of the Future, because now you have a high-tech environment that has a relatively easy user interface that most agents, well, anybody honestly could be trained on it by the MCTT or whoever the leadership is that wants to train on it. Because we're talking about basically, if you can work your home theater system or your home entertainment system, and I know not everybody can, but if you can, you can operate the Market Center of the Future, because it's very simple. It's not, how do I work this PTZ camera, and so what we looked at was, what's the value that this is going to bring? I first looked at it as a trainer, right? That was the lens I looked through first. But then I have the unique advantage of also being an investor in my Market Center. So what kind of retention can we do? Does this create for our Market Center? And now you're creating an environment that your agents are proud of, and that they can do buyer seminars and seller seminars. investor seminars, whatever it is, and they can actually run the technology in that environment and have this place that they're proud to bring their customers and the general public to, for lead generation and relationship building, things like that.
Yeah.
Whereas, before that, you're bringing them in and there's a projector and a screen, and you're like, hey, not to get creepy, but I got to turn the lights out.
Yeah. Yeah, we're bringing in what was that, the projector in school where they put
on the
little
TV cart. The overhead projector.
The overhead projector. Yeah.
Yeah, now those are digital.
Yeah, now those are digital.
And what's cool, so there's another unboxing that I had that I've had that product for months now.
Oh yeah, the
one I know survived because I brought that one home.
Yeah.
But yeah,
those are
so
pretty cool.
Now it's digital, and through the power of Zoom and video conferencing, that just becomes another camera angle, and you just switch back and forth.
Looks like we're going to have to make this one a 3-parter. So stick around. We're going to get into more depth about the market center of the future in the 3rd part. Keep an eye out, guys.